Imagine the wildest party in human history. The champagne is flowing, the music is loud, and everyone is throwing $100 bills out the window. This was the dawn of the 1920s, a period often celebrated as a golden era of glamour and parties. But it was also the time when the seeds of the Great Depression were planted. World War I had ended in 1918, and America emerged as a global victor, entering a period of unprecedented economic prosperity and cultural change known as the Roaring Twenties. As soldiers returned home, the economy received a massive boost from wartime production transitioning into civilian goods. During this decade, business was good and everyone wanted a piece of the action. Factories that once churned out machine guns were now mass-producing modern wonders, like radios, vacuum cleaners, and electric washing machines. Henry Ford revolutionized the world with his moving assembly line, dropping the price of a Model T from $780 in 1910 to just $290 by 1924. What used to take half a day to build now rolled off the line every 90 minutes. By 1929, 10 million American homes had radios, and the country's total wealth had more than doubled. However, this prosperity was built on a dangerous new foundation, the birth of the buy now, pay later culture. For the first time, banks gave out loans freely, allowing ordinary people to finance everything from fur coats and toasters to the latest gadgets. By 1925, approximately 75% of household goods were purchased with loans. This culture of debt extended to the stock market, which became a Disneyland for adults. Everyone, from railroad tycoons to barbers, shoeshine boys, and janitors, was pouring their savings into the New York Stock Exchange. The secret sauce was buying on margin. This allowed an investor to buy $100 worth of stock with only $10 of their own money, borrowing the remaining $90 from a broker. As long as the market went up, it seemed like free money. From 1921 to 1929, the stock market increased sixfold, and by 1929, investments were up 218% compared to 1922. Experts were cheerleading the insanity. Respected economist Irving Fisher famously claimed that stocks had reached what looked like a permanently high plateau. While the cities were partying and the stock market was vibing, the floorboards were rotting. Rural America already looked like a graveyard. The agricultural sector had expanded massively during the war, but once the fighting stopped, global demand plummeted. Farmers were drowning in mortgages for new tractors they couldn't afford, yet they produced record crop yields that they couldn't sell. By the mid-1920s, the average businessman had no idea that farmers were struggling to keep their land. Industrial production was also beginning to slow down. Companies had overestimated their growth, and the global market was reaching a saturation point for luxury goods. European economies, still ravaged by World War I, were struggling to repay massive war debts to America and couldn't afford new consumer items. Despite these warning signs, the government stayed on cloud nine, refusing to hear the concerns of struggling sectors, while the overall economy appeared to be booming. The stock market had become a bubble built on vibes and borrowed money rather than real income. The catastrophe hit on Thursday, October 24, 1929, a day now known as Black Thursday. In the New York Stock Exchange, the scene was one of absolute carnage. People were screaming into telephones as chaos ensued. Two people ran directly into each other, sending sales orders flying into the air like delicate snowflakes, only to be trampled by businessmen running for the doors. Bankers and brokers shouted that all was lost and that this was the end. Sweat poured down faces, and fingers were torn and bloody from the hundreds of paper cuts received while frantically exchanging documents. A record 12.9 million shares changed hands that day. Investors who tried to buy low and sell high found that the high never came. Prices simply kept plummeting. The volume of selling was so high that the ticker tape machines literally could not keep up, running hours behind the actual trades. People were trading blind, selling stocks for pennies just to get out of the market. In a matter of hours, $14 billion of wealth evaporated. Following a brief nervous recovery, Black Tuesday hit on October 29th. It was an outright panic. Over 16.4 million shares were sold, and the market lost roughly a third of its value in just 2 weeks. The Roaring Decade hadn't just ended, it had face planted into a brick wall. People who had been rich on Monday were bankrupt by Thursday. Walking out onto Wall Street after the crash, you would have seen crowds gathered in stunned silence. Many needed a stiff drink, but because of prohibition, alcohol was illegal. Desperate businessmen retreated to hidden speakeasies located behind barbershops, entering through secret phone booths. In these smoke-filled rooms, gangsters were smiling. Business was good for crime bosses who made fortunes off bootleg liquor and loan sharking. As banks began to close, people turned to these gangsters for loans, which came with unbelievable interest rates and the heavy hand of physical consequence if you failed to pay. The true disaster, however, was the banking collapse. Banks had been gambling with customer savings, betting them on the stock market, or extending bad loans for speculation. When the market tanked, the banks couldn't pay their customers back. Bank runs broke out like wildfire as crowds banged on locked doors, screaming for their life savings. Between 1930 and 1933, over 9,000 banks failed, wiping out 9 million savings accounts. Because there was no deposit insurance at the time, once a bank closed its doors, your money was gone forever. The impact of the collapse was global. US banks, panicking for liquidity, called in their overseas loans, causing European economies already duct-taped together to fall into a blender. Germany's fragile recovery collapsed, and global trade plummeted by 66% in just 3 years. By 1933, the United States was unrecognizable. Unemployment hit record levels, peaking at 24.9%, meaning 1 in every 4 Americans who wanted a job couldn't find one. People spent their days walking from factory to factory, only to find they were already at capacity. Manual labor jobs paid only pennies, and even government public works projects suffered from layoffs. Hunger became a constant companion. Soup kitchens had lines that spanned entire city blocks, and people would wait all day only for the food to run out before they reached the front. Families were forced out of their homes and into Hoovervilles, shanty towns made of scrap wood and cardboard, named after President Herbert Hoover, whom many blamed for the crisis. They slept under Hoover blankets, newspapers, and walked with Hoover flags, empty pockets turned inside out. The Great Depression was more than just an economic collapse. It was a period of profound human suffering and systemic failure. Disease, particularly tuberculosis, went unchecked because the healthcare infrastructure was underfunded. If you got sick, you either lived with the illness or you died. Life expectancy and birth rates dropped as resources to support the elderly or newborns vanished. Marriage rates also collapsed by 22% because nobody could afford to start a family. The suffering was not distributed equally. While some wage policies protected white working men, black communities faced extreme discrimination. Many jobs held by black men had no minimum wage, allowing owners to drop pay to unlivable levels. And local governments often denied them the same relief packages provided to white communities. However, a beacon of light appeared in the form of the Black Cabinet led by Mary McLeod Bethune. As a champion for equality, she ensured that every New Deal agency had a black advisor, tripling the number of African Americans working in the government. Interestingly, the number of employed women actually rose by 24% during this time. With marriage rates down, single women flooded into nursing, teaching, and domestic work to support themselves. However, government wage codes legally allowed employers to pay women less than men for the exact same job, a policy that still affects the American workforce today. Nature soon added to the misery. In the Midwest, years of aggressive farming had stripped the land bare. When a severe drought hit, the soil turned to dust and black blizzards swept across the heartland. These giant storms buried entire towns, suffocating livestock and forcing millions to flee west toward California. A legacy of struggle and resilience that redefined the American landscape and its people. In 1932, the American spirit hit its low point when the Bonus Army, thousands of World War I veterans, marched on Washington to beg for their war bonuses early. The government's response was to send in General MacArthur with tanks and tear gas to attack its own heroes, burning their camps to the ground. In 1933, Franklin Delano Roosevelt was sworn in as president. He famously told the nation, "The only thing we have to fear is fear itself." Roosevelt launched the New Deal, a massive alphabet soup of relief, recovery, and reform agencies. The Civilian Conservation Corps, CCC, sent young men to plant trees, while the Works Progress Administration, WPA, hired millions to build roads, bridges, schools, and post offices. Crucially, Roosevelt rebuilt the trust that the market had destroyed. He used fireside chats on the radio to speak to Americans like a neighbor. He established the FDIC so the government would protect bank deposits and the SEC to stop Wall Street from acting like a casino. He also introduced Social Security to provide for the elderly and disabled. While the New Deal restored hope and stabilized the banking industry, the Great Depression did not truly end until the start of World War II. The war created a massive economic stimulus. Suddenly, everyone was busy making tanks, planes, bullets, and bombs. Unemployment finally fell below 10% as the nation's factories ran 24/7 to support the war effort. The Great Depression stands as a warning that loose regulations and greed can lead to an unparalleled catastrophe. It proved that an economy built on hype and debt will eventually see the bill come due. Today, we see rapid growth that is eerily similar to the Roaring Twenties, reminding us to ensure that stock prices reflect true value rather than inflated fantasy. Because once you have seen an entire global system collapse in the blink of an eye, you never look at a bank account or a stock ticker the same way again.